Hello guys and welcome back to my January wrap up. I cannot believe we are already at the end of our first month of the year, but honestly I think I had a pretty good reading month, so we're starting off the year great. I gave a lot of books, I think around 4 to 5 stars, which is honestly like it's very surprising, but I read 7 books. I also read some manhwas and I also DNF'd 4 books, so let's get talking about them. The first book that I read was Bite Your Fingertips, and this honestly was a weird book. It's a Danmei book and it's basically about a high school boy who gets triggered by the smell of the male lead and then he turns into a vampire. Like he has to suck his blood to feed, I guess, and it's the weirdest book ever because it's set in high school. It's very slow burn romance. We have this whole mystery with the male lead's parents. The MC is also a vampire, but there's no lore behind how he became a vampire. He just is a vampire, and I feel like that was supposed to be the thing that kind of forced them to meet each other, but it was just such a weird book. But you know what, I ended up finishing it. And then the next one I read was I Wish You All the Best, which I love this book so much. We have our main character who gets kicked out of their home because they come out as non-binary, and then they move to their sister's house to live with her, and they move to a new high school and everything. And it's really interesting because it really focuses on the idea of identity and sexuality rather than kind of figuring out what university that you're going to go to, because I feel like a lot of contemporary books are always like that. This is very much a coming of age story, and we get to see the development of, you know, the main character's relationship with their parents, their sister, being in their new high school, the new friendship that they are forming. There's also romance in this book, but it is very subtle and not the most important part of the book, which I really like. And I just feel like, oh, it was such a pure relationship, but I don't know, I really like this book in a way. It felt very like comforting and heartfelt, I guess. The next book that I read was The Wedding People, which this was kind of surprising to me because I didn't expect to like it that much, but it's basically about a main character, Phoebe, who goes to a hotel to die, and she ends up crashing a wedding. The bride becomes really upset because she's like, you cannot die on my wedding week, so then she forces Phoebe to kind of take a part of her wedding, and I thought it was kind of like a beautiful but depressing story. There were just certain bits of it that made me really angry, such as the background context of why Phoebe wanted to go to this hotel. She also struggles with mental health, but I feel like she was very empathetic toward other people who was involved in the wedding, such as like the bride and the groom's family and everything, because in my opinion they were really annoying people. And normally I don't like literary fiction books, but I felt like this one was pretty interesting because I liked being, I guess, in Phoebe's point of view, and I don't know, I really liked this book. I did feel a little bit ill in the beginning of the story, if I'm being honest, because the whole context was that her husband was cheating on her, and I hate that so much. So it made me like physically angry, but I really enjoyed the book. Next, I read When Among Crows, which is a very short book. I think it was around 152, and this book proved that you do not need to be a long book to be a good book. It's a fantasy book, and it's basically set in this world where we have the mortals, and then we have these creatures who feed on emotions such as like sadness, anger, fear, and all of that. And then we have this person who hunts down these creatures, and then he gets involved with other creatures, and they kind of go on a quest together and they search for something. There's this whole thing. I don't really know how to explain it because I'll be honest, when I first started it, I was kind of confused, but I loved it so much. I really like it when books talk about the idea of like morality and regret for all the things that you did in the past, and I really like when characters are very like multi-dimensional, and that was what the main character was. I swear in this short book as well, we get like found family, we get romance in a 152-page book, and not gonna lie, the chemistry was electrifying. I then reread Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, which, not gonna lie, rereading this, I was kind of like, oh, this is a little bit slow, this is a little bit boring, but then we got hit with like the final scenes, and then that seriously made me cry, like tears, sobbing, and everything. So I'm really excited to get on with the rest of the series because I know that's when it starts getting more like dense, but also like devastating, because that's when everything goes down, because you know Harry's getting older, stuff starts going on, and this book is really like the shift of everything from, I guess, the innocence of childhood to, you know, all the stuff that happens, having responsibilities as being the boy who lived and everything. But I'm really excited to reread Harry Potter. I think I'm gonna read one book each month because they are very thick, obviously. The next book that I read was The Woman, which is a historical fiction, and I do not like historical fiction books if I'm being honest, but this one is about the Vietnam War and Frankie, who works as a nurse in the war. So she, you know, obviously works as a nurse in the war, but when she comes back, she is dealing with a lot of grief and PTSD. And honestly, this book, I swear, even before the halfway point, I think once she came back from war, literally sobbing, just like every single chapter, every single word, I would like tears streaming down my face. It was actually so hard for me to read, and I really wanted to read it. Like there was something about it that compelled me to finish the book, but it was really hard for me to pick up because, as I mentioned, every single time I read it, I literally cried. So I enjoyed it, but it was a struggle for me to get through. This is why I feel like historical fiction is so important, because you get a deeper perspective of events that you obviously have never experienced yourself. And although like I obviously know about the Vietnam War and I have the idea and the concept of nurses working in these wars, but I still like don't fully understand like the devastation and the pain and impact it really caused. Like you can hear about it, but you just, if you never experience it, like you're never gonna fully understand. And I feel like that's why historical fiction is so important, because you kind of gain like a closer perspective, even if the characters are fictional. In the end, it was an actual event that happened, and yeah, this book made me cry a lot. There were certain things as well that kind of made me angry, such as the men. Hate the men, but yeah, I wish all the best for Frankie. And then the last book that I read was Rules for Rule Breaking, which is a little cute romance book. It's about two Korean Americans who are family friends. They're also rivals, and they're forced by their parents to go on a road trip to kind of go on tours around the universities that they're interested in. And they are rivals, as I mentioned before. They don't like each other, and because of this trip, they are forced to bond. And I really enjoyed it. I thought that it was really cute. I loved seeing the development of the relationship, seen as how they kind of, I guess, like misunderstood each other and how they started to open up with each other, and kind of had fun, because the reason why it's called Rules for Rule Breaking is because of the fact that both of them are very, I guess, strict with themselves. They don't do anything fun, and on this trip they kind of try to be more open, do stuff that they would never do. And while reading that, I really liked seeing how their relationship kind of changed through doing that, because they became closer. But then the ending happened, the whole conflict, and then it just went downhill for me. It felt really rushed, and then there were things that came out that were kind of random, I guess. I feel like I would have liked it a lot more if the ending was different, or if it was written better. I don't really know how to say it, but I thought it was a cute book. Let's talk about the manhwas that I read. I read quite a lot of them because I think this month I was just in a manhwa mood. I honestly still think I'm in a manhwa mood, but the thing is, I try to search for completed manhwas and I'm getting kind of frustrated because I want to read more, but I'm like, why are none of them completed? And also they take forever to finish, so I don't want to start a new one and then just, it's gonna take forever. Like it's gonna take 3 to 5 years, I swear. Even longer maybe. Anyways, I'm just gonna list them out. I read Tied to You, which is basically like, in this world you get a red ring around the person that like you're fated to be with. You cannot fall asleep without them. That's basically how the relationship starts. Although the male lead is also like his friend's brother, older brother, and the male lead is kind of manipulative, but he's also a green forest, so I don't really know. We then have Short Circuit Love, which is a very like short, cute high school romance. Radio Storm, which is a post-apocalyptic world, and this one is actually pretty interesting. Reminds me of Little Mushroom, if you guys know Little Mushroom, but basically we have a main character who has a call, and he has someone who is a caller, which kind of makes his call stronger because his call is kind of like a superpower. It basically has ideas such as like morality, trying to save humanity, but also having to do that you kind of have to do some bad things. Then we have The Great Wish, The Scent of You, Checkmate, which Checkmate. Should have never, like, Checkmate is crazy because I've heard about it from so many people, but would never willingly actually read it if I didn't see a fan out on Pinterest. That's literally why I read it, and then I skipped through it, and then I was like, wait a minute, I need to know what happens. So then I read the whole thing, and I don't understand their relationship or their romance, but I was there for the downfall of that old ugly professor. Then I read The Shape of Your Love, and that's basically all the manhwas I've read this month. So this month I DNF'd 4 books, and the first one was The Atlas Paradox. Unfortunately, I read The Atlas 6 maybe 2 years ago, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna continue reading the rest of the series, and I read The Atlas Paradox, and I was like, I don't know, it's very complicated. We have multiple point of views, which I personally don't like. Half of the characters are so annoying, so self-absorbed, and to be honest, I don't even know what was going on. Like, it was so confusing because it felt like it had no plot, but also too many plots, and it honestly felt like I was watching a reality TV show. But I think what happened was that I read kind of a summary of the last book, and while reading that summary I was like, you're telling me I'm reading this series just to get through all of that, just read the whole thing? And I was like, I don't really know if it's worth it. I do think that the book was interesting. I just think I was also very confused and honestly not bothered to read it, which is why I decided to DNF it. I then DNF'd The Hawthorne Legacy, which I literally just DNF'd it because it was honestly, I'm gonna say it was a bad book. Like, I tried to read it so badly. I tried to push through, but then I just couldn't. Something about the writing was just so cringy. I swear, especially Grayson and Jamison, whenever they had a line, like, internally I cringe. And the whole love triangle between brothers, I hate that so much. We gotta stop doing that. There's nothing about that that's like attractive in any way, and the fact that this has happened twice is really fishy to me. And I don't know, like, I tried to read it. I also just didn't really like the main character and her narration, and as I mentioned, the two guys, like, I swear every single time, oh my god, every single time they spoke, it was like they tried to sound very like broody but mysterious, but to me it just sounded like, I don't know. Also the fact that she was battling her attraction between the two brothers, it was so annoying because she would see both of them and she would be like, oh, I wish he would kind of kiss me or something like that. And I'm like, girl, you have more important things to worry about than two brothers who honestly both of them suck. Okay, I read Like People Do because I watched one of Sunny's videos and she said that she read this book, and then I started reading it, and then I was like, it's not good. It just felt very Wattpad-y, and it was really weird because the relationship was formed very quickly, like right off the bat. Then again, I didn't try to read that much because from the moment I read the first chapter, I was already like, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna like this book. Okay, the next book that I DNF'd was Onyx Storm, which this was a big one. Honestly, I was very excited to read this book because I wouldn't say I'm the biggest fan of Fourth Wing or Iron Flame, but it is a kind of entertaining series to read. And then I read Onyx Storm and I was like, this is a mess. Truly, this is a mess. It was so annoying because half of the time Violet, not even half, it's like 95% of the time Violet's thought was just on Xayden. She was like, oh my god, he's so hot. Like, every single time she saw him, every single time she described him, and she thinks too highly of him, in my opinion. And then Xayden was like, I'm a bad person, so don't come near me. I love you, but like, you shouldn't come near me. And I just felt like the whole plot was kind of choppy. Like, the scenes felt so choppy and there were so many characters, I just couldn't keep up with them. And I don't know, it was really frustrating because I felt like she obviously had this whole plot for Andana, and then the whole entire time, honestly, she was thinking about Zayn, and that I think was the biggest thing that pissed me off because the romance at this point was so flat, I guess. Like, I don't care about them anymore. Well, I never did. They just had no chemistry. I felt like if they were more slow burn, it would have been more exciting to read. But yeah, I feel like the book came out way too quickly. It came out way too quickly, and I think I heard about the fact that it was supposed to originally be a trilogy, but then it got extended. I think that's honestly its downfall. So I did want to read it, but because it's like 500 pages, I was like, I cannot deal with that. And then the last book that I DNF'd was The God of the Woods, and this is a mystery thriller book. I literally just didn't want to read it. Every single time I thought of picking it up, I just genuinely couldn't. Like, I didn't want to pick it up and read it, and I feel like that's a bad sign. I don't think it's a bad book. Like, I think that I definitely could have finished it because I read 40% of it, which is obviously quite a lot, but I think at that point I was like, I don't know, I'm just not super into the book, which is why I just decided not to push through. But that's basically all the books that I've read in January. I do think that I did have a good reading month. Like, I'm quite happy with the books that I read because I found books that I really enjoyed and I really loved. So I'm excited for February and to see what books I read this month. Hopefully this month I read, not that I want to read more, but like I kind of want to read different books, or like books that have been on my TBR for a very long time, because I looked through my want to read list on Goodreads and I was like, the books that I've added to this list all look quite interesting, so I want to get through them, hopefully. But that's basically all the books that I've read in this month. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. Please like, subscribe, and all that jazz, and I will see you guys in another video. Bye!